Not the soft kind. Not burgundy. This was loud, unapologetic, deliberately provocative red, the kind she used to say was too much for someone like her. And the second I saw it, I knew it wasn't for me. She walked past me, heels clicking on the tile like war drums, phone in one hand, lip gloss in the other. No smile. No eye contact. Just the scent of something new, not her usual perfume. Something sharper. Exotic. A scent she never wore around me. Going somewhere? I asked, voice too soft to matter. She paused at the door. Looked back. I told you. Dinner with friends. But she hadn't. I checked my phone. No messages, no mention, no calendar event. Just her brushing past me in a dress that didn't belong to this life, in a silence that had stretched across our house for weeks. And when the door closed behind her, it echoed, like a final punctuation mark. I stood in our kitchen, next to the untouched plate of food I'd made, her favorite, even remembered the crushed rosemary, and stared at the candle I lit like an idiot. It flickered once, then gave up. She used to love my candles. Used to love a lot of things, really. Used to laugh when I spilled pasta sauce on my shirt. Used to dance barefoot in the living room when it rained. Used to squeeze my hand under restaurant tables for no reason. Now, I don't think she'd notice if I vanished mid-sentence. But here's the part that won't let me sleep. She wanted me to see the dress. That wasn't an accident. She could have left quietly. Slipped out like smoke, no trace. But no, she wanted to be seen. Wanted me to stand there, invisible, and watch her become someone else's fantasy. And the worst part? I said nothing. I didn't ask who. I didn't beg. I didn't accuse her of lying, even though the lipstick on the coffee mug wasn't hers. Even though the password on her phone changed. Even though the Uber receipt in her purse said, Hotel Miroview 2 guests. No, I just stood there, watched the door, listened to the silence grow louder, and waited for a text that never came. Until it did. 46 minutes later. Just 3 words. Don't wait up. Not love you. Not home late. Not even a fake emoji. Just a message that confirmed what I already knew. And so I made a choice. No revenge. No confrontation. No tears. I reached into the drawer, pulled out the thing she never thought I'd touch, and placed it on the table. Not the knife. Not the keys. Not the ring. It was the envelope. The one marked only if she does it again. I had written it 9 months ago. Now, I was going to open it. And that's when the entire story, the real story, started. The envelope wasn't even sealed. That's what struck me first. After all those months, after writing only if she does it again, and pen shaky from adrenaline, I never even sealed the damn thing. As if a part of me always knew I'd have to open it one day. As if hope had quietly packed its bags long ago and left me standing alone in the ruins. I unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. It was creased, slightly yellowed at the edges from being tucked away in that drawer, the one she never opened anymore. Funny, it sat beneath the placemat she insisted we use for guests, even though we hadn't hosted a dinner in over a year. The letter was short. Just bullet points, actually. A list of what I'd do if she ever crossed the line again. Do not shout. Do not ask, why? Do not give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Execute the plan. Vanish. Back then, I'd written it in one sitting, right after I found her accidental text to someone named Theo that read, "Can't wait to taste you again." She claimed it was for a friend, a joke. Said it was about wine tasting. I wanted to believe her so badly I almost convinced myself I was the problem for asking. But I never deleted that message. I just wrote a plan, folded it neatly, and buried it beneath dishes no one used. Now here I was, reading it like a script. My fingers trembled, but I felt no panic. Just the stillness that comes when your brain finally accepts something your heart's been avoiding. I got up, walked to the coat closet, and pulled down the small duffel I packed during my last business trip. It was still half full. I only added 2 things, a hard drive and the manila folder labeled records. No clothes. No toiletries. Just the essentials, the truth, and my exit. She didn't expect that. She expected a fight. Tears. Maybe even one of those public meltdowns she could twist into sympathy online. But not this. Not silence. I didn't leave the house yet. I just sat. Sat and waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. Maybe the sound of her key in the lock. Maybe her laugh from the hallway. Maybe a pause. Something human. But it never came. What came instead was a notification. An email. From an address I didn't recognize. No.reply.booking.confirmed at retreathaven.lux. Subject line. Final confirmation. Weekend romance package. Suite 6. Ms. Celine Wadsworth plus guest. I opened it. Everything inside was branded, glossy, expensive. A couple's retreat. Champagne service. Late checkout. 2 full days in the mountains, king suite, private spa, guided intimacy coaching. My wife had booked a weekend for 2 under her maiden name. And it started tomorrow morning. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the flickering light above the stove. Something in me stopped clenching. Like I'd reached the last page of a novel where you finally know the ending and it's terrible. Yes, but at least it's known. Then the front door opened. She came in barefoot, humming, carrying a white box from that bakery she only visits when she's smug about something. She didn't notice the envelope on the table, didn't see the open laptop or the hard drive beside the duffel. She looked at me and tilted her head. Did you wait up? I smiled. No. She paused, suspicious, but only for a second. Well, I brought tiramisu. Tiramisu. Her apology food. Her reset button. And as she moved into the kitchen, opening the fridge like nothing had changed, I realized something far more terrifying than betrayal. She truly believed I would stay quiet forever. That I would fold back into my chair, eat dessert, and pretend nothing happened. That I would remain her background character. But she forgot one thing. I don't need to scream to disappear. I didn't sleep that night. She went to bed humming, like she'd won something. Like whatever secret play she had rehearsed in her mind had gone exactly the way she wanted. She didn't even question the duffel bag by the door. She saw it, paused slightly, then gave me a soft laugh and said, "Going somewhere?" as if it were a joke. I just smiled back and said, "We'll see." She liked that answer. Thought it meant I was chasing her again, that I was still on the hook. But while she curled up under the blanket in our bed, a bed that smelled like lavender and someone else's cologne now, I sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, laptop open in the dark, typing out a different ending to this story. Not a revenge fantasy. Not some public blast to ruin her life. No, what I wanted was something quieter. Smarter. Permanent. I opened a private folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were screenshots. Photos. Bank statements. The Uber receipts she thought she deleted. The mirrored cloud backup she forgot I set up on her phone. Hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, voice memos. There were 8 different names tied to 4 different men, all dated within the past 18 months. But it was never about the number. It was the pattern. It wasn't an affair. It was a lifestyle. She had reinvented herself as something between a muse and a shapeshifter, adopting different versions of herself for different men. I saw the notes she kept in her phone, under a disguised folder named Tax Notes. It was actually a list of fake birthdays, preferences, favorite phrases she used with each guy. She was creating characters, roles, personalities. She was managing it like a side business, one that I never subscribed to. I even found a selfie, not the kind she ever posted. This one was taken in a hotel mirror, in the exact same red dress she wore the night before, fingers to her lips in a mock shush. It was sent to someone named Grace and Jim. The timestamp? 15 minutes after she told me she was with Tracy and Michelle. Suddenly, everything clicked. The mood swings. The disappearances. The weird spike in her confidence that never touched me, only strangers. But here's the part that really turned my stomach. There was a document in her drafts folder titled, "What to Say If He Finds Out." A bullet-pointed list of emotional manipulation tactics. Phrases like, "You were always working." I didn't feel seen. We just disconnected. She had a script ready. For my pain. I shut the laptop and stared at the shadows on the ceiling. It was almost 3 a.m., and I could still hear her breathing softly in our bedroom. It hit me then, she wasn't planning to leave. She wanted me to leave. Quietly. Like a gentleman. With dignity. So she could retell the story her way. So she could cry to her friends and say I gave up on the marriage, that I checked out emotionally, that she was abandoned. It was genius, in a way. And sick. But I didn't storm in. I didn't confront. That's not the kind of man I am. Not the type she could ever accuse of violence, rage, or hysteria. No. I took out my phone, pressed record, and walked slowly to the bedroom doorway. I stayed in the shadows, just enough to see her curled up with a pillow she used to call mine. I whispered into the mic, "I forgive you, Celine. I won't stay in a house built on a script, but I will leave with the truth." Then I hit stop. That recording would come in handy. Not for her, but for the people she'd try to fool after I was gone. The next step wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. And it started with one word. Transfer. I opened my banking app, tapped into the shared account, and initiated a full transfer of my contributions into a separate account I'd prepared under my name months ago, the one she didn't know existed. Then I sent the documents from the folder to a secure drive tied to my lawyer's email, marked with a single instruction. Schedule the filing. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a day of confrontation. It was going to be a day of quiet exits, uncontested filings, and a red dress left behind without an audience. And she would never see it coming. The house felt like it was holding its breath the next morning. Birds chirped somewhere in the yard, but even their sound felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's morning. I didn't make coffee. I didn't shower. I didn't even change my clothes. I just sat at the edge of the bed and watched her sleep, peacefully, deeply, like a woman who believed her husband would either break or beg, but certainly never outmaneuver her. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. She didn't stir. I leaned slightly and saw the name flash across the screen. Grayson, Jim flexed biceps, followed by a preview message. Still on for 10 a.m.? I got the sweet upgrade winking face dot. I let it sit there, blinking like a warning light, and waited for it to vanish. 10 seconds later, I was already downstairs. The transfer had cleared. My half of everything, gone from the joint account. What remained was hers, mostly credit card debt and subscriptions to apps she thought were secret. I didn't delete anything, didn't touch her passwords. I wanted her to log in and feel the cold absence of what used to be ours. I left the tiramisu untouched on the counter, right where she placed it the night before. But next to it now sat a new envelope. One she hadn't seen before. A plain white one, identical in shape and weight to the one I'd pulled from the drawer, poetic, in a way. Inside was a single photo. Her at the hotel with Theo, blurry but clear enough to be undeniable. I had printed it the week I discovered the first affair. I didn't use it then, but today it had a purpose. Beneath it, in all caps, I'd written only 4 words. I see it all. I placed it perfectly between the dessert box and her phone charger, the 2 things she touched every single morning. She wouldn't miss it. Then I walked outside, not bothering to close the front door quietly. My car was already packed. The hard drive, the folder, the voice recording, a burner phone, 3 sets of keys. Even my grandmother's silver pendant that she once told me I should leave in the junk drawer because it clashed with the decor. I took it anyway. It was mine. Unlike everything else in the house, it hadn't been touched by lies. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw the curtains shift upstairs. She was awake now. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Not yet. I drove exactly 4 blocks to the edge of the neighborhood and parked under a line of overgrown pines. That's when I pulled out the second phone, the one I hadn't used in months. There was one saved number. Tanner. Tanner isn't a friend. Not really. We met 2 years ago during a late-night support call at work. I was handling a server outage. He was the night manager at a data recovery firm. We bonded over black coffee and broken things. One night, when I told him, barely, about the weird vibe in my marriage, he offered a line I never forgot. You ever need proof you're not crazy, you call me. I tapped his name. He answered on the second ring. Ellis. Yeah. He didn't say what's wrong. He just said, finally. Tanner had access to recovery tools the average person would never dream existed. Deleted texts. Voicemails that never fully uploaded. Cloud folders that apps don't list but still sync in the background. I had given him access a month ago, under the innocent excuse of testing security leaks. Need you to trigger the folder, I said. There was a click of keys. Done. It'll send to the list we talked about. I thanked him. What Celine didn't know was that the hotel confirmation, the selfies, the romantic receipts, they weren't going into a court file. They were going to herself. Each one would forward to her inbox, one by one, every half hour. Each time-stamped. Each labeled with nothing but, mirror check. Her own phone would haunt her. Her own cloud would choke her. And all I had to do was disappear. But I wasn't gone just yet. I had one more thing to do before she saw the empty closet. Before she opened the envelope. Before she realized that the story she thought she was directing had already ended 4 pages ago. I needed to stop by her mother's house. Because I wasn't the only one she lied to. Celine's mother, Jean, lived exactly 17 minutes from our house. A pale green cottage tucked behind hedges that always seemed on the brink of giving up. She baked lemon bars on Wednesdays, left her screen door open when it rained, and never once called me by my name. I was always just that sweet man. It's important that I say this next part carefully. I didn't go there to hurt her. I went because I suspected something I never wanted to admit. I pulled up in front of her house around 9:15 a.m., parked in the shade, and sat there for a minute gripping the steering wheel like it might float away if I let go. Her living room curtains were open. The television was on. Jean hated silence. She always needed voices, even if they weren't talking to her. When I knocked, she opened the door within seconds, apron still tied, flower on her sleeve. "Ellis," she said, surprised but not unhappy. And then she noticed the look on my face. "Is everything okay?" I stepped inside. The air smelled like sugar and lemon and something faintly metallic, maybe from the tin trays she reused too many times. I didn't sit. I held up my phone and showed her the hotel confirmation email. "Did you know?" Her lips parted, then closed again. She didn't ask what. She didn't squint at the screen like she couldn't read it. She just looked past me, toward the hallway, like she wanted to escape into another room. "You shouldn't be showing me that," she said quietly. That was answer enough. I lowered the phone. "How long?" Jean turned back to me and said nothing. That silence was volcanic. Not a denial. Not a gasp of horror. Just a long, guilty breath from a woman who'd spent years pretending she wasn't part of the act. "You helped her cover this up?" I asked. She blinked slowly, then walked into the kitchen. She didn't invite me to follow, but I did. She took off her apron, folded it like she was resetting a display window, then leaned against the counter. "She's not a bad person, Ellis," Jean finally said, voice low. "She's always needed more." "More?" I laughed, but it came out wrong, like a cough wrapped in grief. "More than what, Jean? A man who loved her? A home? Loyalty? Security?" She flinched, but didn't answer. I stepped closer. "Did she lie to you too? Or were you part of the show?" Jean's voice cracked. "She didn't tell me everything. But yes, I knew enough." "Why?" "Because you're predictable," she snapped suddenly, her voice rising for the first time. "You sit still. You're quiet. You wouldn't leave even if she set the house on fire." And I thought, maybe if she got it out of her system, she'd come back to you. Maybe she'd remember what mattered. I was stunned, not by the words, but by the way she said them, like I was a loyal pet who should have just wagged his tail and waited. "I used to think she got her charm from you," I said, walking toward the door. "Now I know she inherited something else entirely." Before I stepped out, Jean called after me. "She doesn't know how to be loved. That's not your fault." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my eyes dry. And still, not one tear. I drove again. Not home. Not that it was home anymore. I parked outside a small, neutral cafe off the highway. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions and no one looked up. I ordered nothing. Just sat at a back table, opened my laptop, and watched the real-time email tracker. The one Tanner had installed. I saw when the first message hit Celine's inbox. I saw when she opened it. I saw when she clicked the second photo, the one where she kissed Theo behind the parking garage. I saw when she forwarded nothing, replied to no one, sat completely still in digital silence. Then came a call. My phone buzzed twice. It was her. I didn't answer. A minute later, another call. Then a message. "Can we talk? Please. Right now." Another. "Where are you? Please. Just tell me you're safe." Then, "You don't understand everything. I need to explain. I need you to hear me." I watched each bubble appear, frantic, out of breath. Then came the one I knew was coming all along. "You left? You took everything. No emojis now. No exclamation points. Just fear. Real, raw, ugly fear. Not of losing me, but of losing control." She had awakened in the center of her web only to find the prey gone, the threads cut, and her carefully rehearsed performance unscheduled. I turned off the tracker. I didn't need to watch her unravel. I just needed to let her sit with the silence she used to weaponize. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I won, but because I finally stopped playing her game. I didn't turn my phone back on for the rest of the day. I didn't have to. I knew exactly what she'd do next. Not because I'm psychic, but because I finally accepted something I'd tried to deny for years. Celine doesn't react to pain. She performs through it. And the moment her reality collapses, she looks for a stage. Around midnight, I walked into a motel off Route 76. Neon sign flickering, a vending machine that only took coins, and the kind of front desk clerk who doesn't ask for your last name. I gave them cash, no ID, and declined the room key sleeve. I just needed a door that locked and a bed that didn't care who I was. The television in the room was already on, volume low. A rerun of some cooking show played in the background. A man was plating risotto with shaking hands, trying to explain his passion for saffron to a judge who barely looked up. I stood in front of that screen for a while, watching the man's entire emotional breakdown play out in silence. Then the phone started vibrating again. I had turned it off, but I hadn't taken the battery out. It buzzed 6 times before I finally powered it up again. As soon as it connected, I was hit with a flood of messages, not just from her, but from numbers I didn't recognize. Ellis, man, what's going on? I just got some email. Was that a mistake? Did you actually leave her? She's here, and she's freaking out. Then her voice messages came in, one after another, 12 total. I played the first one. Ellis, please don't do this. Please. I know I screwed up. I know. But you don't understand everything, I promise. Just talk to me. You always said we could talk about anything. Click. Second one. I woke up and the closet was half empty. Where did you go? You're not answering. You always answer. Please, don't shut me out. By the fourth message, her voice was changing, growing sharper, more desperate. You're being dramatic. This isn't fair. You think you're some kind of saint? You're not perfect, Ellis. You never were. You hid from me for months. You disappeared into your screens. By the 7th message, she was sobbing. By the 9th, she was laughing. By the 12th, she was silent, just breathing. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched for her name. Not because I expected results. She's not famous, just loud. But I needed to see if she'd already started rewriting the narrative. And sure enough, on her social media profile, the one she once accused me of being too quiet on, there was a new post. A picture of our living room, dark and empty, with a single caption. Sometimes you wake up and the person you loved is just gone. No explanation. Just emptiness. The comments rolled in fast. Oh no, girl. Are you okay? Wait, what? What happened? You deserve better. Text me. I'll come over. There it was. The spotlight. And she was crying into it like an actress with mascara tears and a script in her pocket. What none of them knew, not yet, was that I had the rest of the story queued up. I didn't send it yet. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wanted to protect myself from becoming like her. Impulsive, cruel, hungry for validation. I wasn't going to blast her with screenshots or post hotel photos in the comments. That was her language. Mine would be different. Precise. Quiet. Permanent. Instead, I sent 3 emails. One to my lawyer, confirming the date and time to finalize the filing. One to the landlord, informing him I was vacating and no longer liable for her portion of the lease. And one to my manager at work, requesting 2 weeks of remote leave with no explanation. I needed silence. I needed the sound of a motel sink dripping at midnight more than I needed applause from strangers. But that didn't mean I was done. I had one more name to deal with, a name that kept echoing in her messages, in her lies, in the background of photos she forgot to crop. Grayson, the man she thought was her cleanest secret, the one she planned the weekend getaway with, the one she labeled in her phone as Jim Flexed Biceps, the one she had no idea was the easiest to find. Because unlike the others, Grayson left a trail. And tomorrow, I was going to follow it. Finding Grayson wasn't hard. He left a breadcrumb trail so obvious I almost laughed. A quick reverse lookup of the phone number from the retreat booking gave me his full name, which led to a barely locked fitness blog, an Instagram filled with motivational quotes and gym mirror selfies. And, most helpful of all, a public post from 2 days ago captioned, "Weekend recharge with the woman who fuels me. Let's go 100 points fire hashtag private getaway hashtag healing energy hashtag no judgment zone." He had blurred her face, but I knew the angle of her jaw like the back of my hand. I stared at the photo from the motel room, chewing the inside of my cheek until it stung. He wasn't older than me, not stronger, not smarter. He looked like the kind of guy who talked about grind culture while leaving unread messages from his own kid. He wore wraparound sunglasses indoors and used the word alpha unironically. And yet, this was the man my wife risked everything for. Or maybe not everything, maybe just the parts of herself she didn't value anymore. I drove out the next morning to the address tied to one of his LLCs. A personal training studio called Core Rituals tucked behind a strip mall next to a vape shop and a sad little frozen yogurt place. His SUV was parked diagonally across 2 spaces. Of course it was. I waited. Didn't go in. Didn't need to. I knew something about people like Grayson. They always come outside to take phone calls because they think it makes them look important. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, the doors swung open, And there he was, tight shirt, backward cap, phone to his ear, pacing in small loops like a lion in a very dumb zoo. I stayed in my car and recorded him. Not for blackmail. For something better. He was mid-sentence, grinning. Nah, she left this morning, yeah. Said she needed to deal with her husband drama. Pfft. Not my problem, bro. I told her what this was. If she caught feelings, that's on her. I don't do rescue missions. He laughed. Not a deep laugh. A thin, rehearsed one. The kind that bounces off gym mirrors and echoes back hollow. I stopped recording, then got out. He noticed me instantly. I wasn't close, just leaned against my car with both hands in my pockets, watching him. He turned his back. Not to hide. To dismiss. He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. He wasn't the kind to ask for names. Just access. I walked up slow. Calm. No rush. No confrontation. Just closure. Grayson? He turned. Annoyed. Yeah. I'm Celine's husband. His face froze. 1 second. Maybe 2. Then he smirked, like he was already reaching for some charming, dismissive line to disarm me. But I didn't give him the chance. I'm not here to fight you, I said, flat. That'd be giving you too much credit. He shifted his stance, more defensive now. I'm not here to warn you, either. I don't care if you keep seeing her. I just thought you should know something. He frowned, squinting. Everything she told you about me was a lie. But not because I'm perfect, because she needed me to be a villain in the story she sold you. That's what she does. She edits people. Edits herself. You're not her first, Grayson. You won't be her last. You're just the one with the clearest exit sign. He stared at me like I was speaking in riddles. Maybe I was. Then I handed him the burner phone, already loaded with the photos, receipts, and audio of her talking to other men. Not to punish her. To reveal her. You said you're not into rescue missions, I said. Neither am I. That's why I'm walking away. But you might want to check how far you're being dragged. And I left. Didn't wait for his response. Didn't need his apology. He was just a symptom. I got in the car and drove until the strip mall was nothing but a blur in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed again. This time from an old contact, Alan, a mutual friend of mine and Celine's from when we were newlyweds. I picked up. Ellis, man. I hate to say it, but I think you need to see what she's doing now. He sent me a link. I clicked it. It was a live stream. Celine, crying, telling her followers and strangers that her husband had emotionally abandoned her and used silence as a weapon. She said I had always kept her small, that I left without warning, and that maybe some women are only ever loved in fragments. She called herself a survivor. She framed herself as someone who had escaped control, and people believed her. The chat was flooded with support, donations, encouragement. They were already painting me as a ghost, the silent villain in someone else's poetry. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just watched her lie in real time. And smiled. Because I hadn't disappeared. Not yet. And when I finally did, I'd make sure the last word wasn't hers. I didn't reply to her live stream. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself in the chat or email any of the people who believed her story. Because in the end, I realized something I hadn't known at the beginning of all this. Truth doesn't beg to be believed. It just waits. I let her go viral. Let her cry for likes. Let her monetize a version of me that never existed, the distant, cold man who vanished without a trace. And I let it run, right up until the date I'd circled quietly on my calendar, the day the divorce finalized. Celine never contested it. Maybe she knew she couldn't. Maybe part of her expected me to crawl back before the ink dried. But when the envelope came in the mail, confirming that everything, the house, the accounts, the name, had been legally separated, I didn't celebrate. I just stood in the kitchen of my new apartment, poured myself a glass of water, and let the silence finally feel like peace instead of punishment. That night, I did one last thing. I wrote a post, not on social media, not in a dramatic video, but in a quiet corner of a small online forum for people starting over after betrayal. No usernames. No audience metrics. Just a place where stories don't need edits to be heard. I titled it, I wasn't the villain. I was just done. And I told the whole truth. No bitterness. No insults. Just facts. About how some people fall in love with versions of themselves they only meet in affairs. About how silence isn't always control, sometimes it's survival. And about how walking away isn't weakness. It's clarity. That post didn't go viral. But it got private messages. Dozens. From men and women who had stayed too long. From people who had been rewritten out of their own lives by someone who needed a better plot twist. From strangers who just wrote, "Thank you for saying it out loud." It was enough. Weeks passed. Then months. No more calls from Celine. No more live streams. She moved on to a different narrative, one where she was reborn. She started coaching sessions online about recovering your voice. And you know what? I didn't care anymore. Because I'd found mine. In smaller places. In real conversations. In quiet mornings where the air wasn't full of walking on eggshells. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Nothing special. Just shapes, textures, abstracts that made no sense to anyone but me. I hung one up in my living room. Not for compliments. For freedom. And one morning, while I was buying coffee at the corner place near my apartment, a woman behind me tapped my shoulder. "I think you dropped this," she said, holding out my key. I thanked her. She smiled. Not too wide. Not performative. Just real. We talked for a few minutes. Turned into lunch a few days later. No pressure. No theatrics. Just two people trying to be human with each other. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not my worth. Not my past. Not my side of the story. Because the truth was, I didn't need to be the hero. I just needed to stop being the ghost. And that's how my story ends, not with revenge, not with applause,